Hello, I'm TMN, and welcome to today's movie review. All Quiet on the Western Front is a 2022 remake of the 1930 Best Picture Academy Award winner of the same name. It was directed by Edward Berger and stars Felix Kammerer, Daniel Brühl, and Sebastian Hook. The film was released in America on the Netflix streaming service on October 28, 2022. The film follows the character of Paul, an enthusiastic German man who enlists to fight in the war and make the fatherland proud, because that's basically what all young men did at that time. However, it doesn't take him long to realize that the sweet taste of glory that his forefathers had promised him has a very bitter aftertaste to it. Without giving too much of the plot away, I'll stick to three main talking points: look, tone, and message. To start, I have to give the highest praise to James Friend, the film's cinematographer. There is such an aesthetically pleasing variety of shots in this movie that I could honestly just spend the next 10 minutes talking about just the way this film looks alone. Narratively, the movie shifts between two basic styles: intense and graphic battle sequences, which are usually filmed in a third-person perspective using a handheld camera, and still uninterrupted shots of nature that are symmetrically framed in long shots and serve as a transition between the quiet moments of unrestful boredom that the characters experience between combat. I love this way that the cinematography captures the opposing sides of this film's thematic elements. Sweeping through the trenches or across the open battlefield, you feel as if you are there with our characters as they run blindly through a haze of gunsmoke and debris. When soldiers engage with their melee weapons, you feel the weight of them. You feel the impact of their blows. This is an intense war movie that does not shy away from the horrors of first-hand combat, but more on that later. Going back to the other side of the film's narrative structure, let's talk about the quieter moments. The moments when our protagonists are simply waiting around for their next orders. From a story perspective, these scenes are, of course, meant to serve as character development, and the movie does do a decent job of getting you to care about these characters before they are thrust into battle. But I also like the simplicity of these moments as well. These are men. They are fathers, they're husbands, they're brothers, they are friends. These are just regular people trapped in a dark world. Next, I would like to talk about the tone of the movie, but before I do, I feel like I should talk about some other war movies just for comparison really quickly. When we think of war movies, we're probably going to be thinking of something like Saving Private Ryan or Hacksaw Ridge. My point in short is that Hollywood usually likes to romanticize war. They treat the battlefield like a canvas, and blood is the paint that strokes across the board. Soldiers are always dressed in the nicest uniforms, and all of the A-list actors always have their pristine, freshly shaven faces showing. What I deeply appreciated about this film is that it does not attempt to make war look appealing in any way. I say this in the nicest way. This film is ugly. It is disgusting and unpleasant to look at. The main character is either caked in blood or dried muck throughout the majority of the movie, and every scene set in the trenches feels wet and dingy. I wish more war movies could be as unforgiving as this one. No sugarcoating, no glorious shots of slow-motion charges into the fray, just the truth. Finally, let's take a moment to analyze this film's message, which is basically that war is bad. Now, the anti-war message has been done before. The theme of war being this futile game of chess played between suits in an ivory tower controlling unwitting pawns is certainly addressed here. There is a jarring opposition between the characters on the battlefield and the characters who are in their high mansions eating steak dinners with red wine. While I can certainly see the perspective of someone coming to the conclusion that this film is about war being bad, I think the message here is that war is borrowed time. Most movies of this genre feel the need to paint the numbers of a plot for the audience so they know where the next thread is going. What makes this movie work in a strange way is its lack of a story. Here, things just happen. Characters fight for one scene, the next they sit around doing measly activities. I think war in general feels like borrowed time, just waiting around for the next inevitable moment of life that comes along. Now, before I wrap up this review with my final thoughts, I would be remiss not to mention the acting. Felix Kammerer, who plays Paul, does an outstanding job in his role, and really sells the idea of being a frightened, uncertain man in the face of war. My favorite scene by far takes place in a large crater and involves Paul's interaction with an enemy French soldier. It's prolonged and unforgiving. The grittiness and diegetic sound of the scene really sell the realism of the moment. Paul displays everything from shock to regret to fear, mourning, nausea, and empathy. And the best part is how Kammerer pulls this off with simple facial expressions throughout a good chunk of this movie. In conclusion, this movie really surprised me with how good it was. When it comes to Netflix, their shows are usually pretty good, but in their feature film department, they are usually very lacking. Whenever they release a movie, I'm usually just expecting some mediocre quality that I'll immediately forget the next day. This film will definitely stick with me for years to come. I can't really say anything else without giving too much away or overselling it to the point of seeming overrated, so all I can say is, if you have 2.5 hours to spare, definitely check this film out. Thanks for watching this review. I'm TMN. Until next time.